The Kings right now are just in this really weird state. When your best player or one of your best players, your leader, the guy who's been on your team for so long, is involved in trade rumors and is pretty much openly just being shopped by your front office, hasn't even requested a trade. That doesn't necessarily means he wants to stay, but he hasn't requested a trade, and your front office is just shopping him openly in the midst of a season where you were supposedly trying to win and trying to really go from being a play-in team kind of to like actually a top six team in the Western Conference. And now this team is just playing in such a weird state. I don't feel like it really impacted them all that much in Philadelphia. I just felt like they were missing some 3-point shots, but it's really impossible for me to know. But this game against OKC, I mean, I feel like they came out and I feel like they played hard at the start, but it just felt like they weren't totally there. And so it's a game against OKC, right? It's not a game that you expect to win anyways. And so you can look at it one way in that you weren't going to win it anyways, but you can also look at it the other way where it's like, well, you're in this state where the vibes are down and a loss is a loss and it just feels even worse because you are in this weird state. But no matter what, getting absolutely stomped by a team, no matter how good they are, cannot feel good and doesn't feel good. And when you have a guy like Aaron Wiggins coming in and going 16 for 30 and scoring a career high 41 points, and OKC coming in and grabbing 70 total rebounds, 20 of them being offensive, to your 37 rebounds. That feels awful. And I feel like those rebounding numbers are pretty indicative of how this team is kind of playing with what's going on around the team and the drama that's going on around the team right now. Because, I mean, they just couldn't rebound the ball. When Domantas Sabonis is only grabbing 7 rebounds in a game, you know something is really wrong. And so honestly, I mean, I feel bad for the team. I feel bad for all the players. I feel bad for the coaching staff. I feel bad for Doug Christie for coming in and being an interim head coach and having to deal with this. Like, yeah, they're NBA players. They're getting compensated just fine to have to play in these conditions. They'll be okay, but I still feel bad for especially like Doug Christie coming in and his first chance at being a head coach, and these are kind of these circumstances that he has to coach in. And it's sad to me because I feel like the Kings were gaining momentum. They were feeling better under Doug Christie, right? And the vibes were on the way up. And in a way, what happened to this team in January in this stretch under Doug Christie is kind of the same thing that just happened to this roster as a whole. And so what I mean by that is you make a change and things are feeling good and you're outperforming expectations. You're playing super well. And of course, things might come down. That's expected. You expect to lose some games. You expect to lose to the Oklahoma City Thunder. But it feels different because of kind of what's happening around the team and because the front office doesn't seem to be supplying the team with the necessary changes to continue that upward trajectory. And so I feel like that's kind of the same thing that happened with this roster as a whole, where you have the initial being team season where you get the 3rd seed, everything's feeling super good, the vibes are high, and then nothing happened after that. And so of course you expect to come down a little bit in the standings, but at some point you need some help to address the holes on the roster so that you can, for the most part, continue to have an upward trajectory with this roster. And they just never did that. And so now here we are with a game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who can pick any team apart, but they just absolutely picked apart the Kings and exposed every single flaw that this team has. So it's kind of the perfect game to have to show how this front office has failed to build this team, because it was just the Kings lacking the ability to switch, lacking any defensive versatility, any switchability, any length, any size, any guys that are just like really going to go after it and go grab a rebound or go, switch onto a guy and lock him up. At least it was nice to see Isaac Jones come in and play because he's that type of guy. But that's the thing. It's not like the Kings front office in this period. It's not like any of the moves that they did make to add to the roster were bad. It's not like adding DeMar to this team is bad. It's not like or going and getting Keon Ellis as an undrafted guy and Isaac Jones as an undrafted guy are bad. None of these moves are bad, but it's just the moves that they didn't make that hurt more. And so, I don't know how much you guys are kind of tapped in to really what's going on and all the rumors and all that. But apparently, about a week ago, James Ham reported this. The Kings had a deal for John Collins lined up. And while John Collins may not be the perfect fit, I mean, there is no perfect fit that you're going to go get. He's a guy with size. He's a guy with athleticism that could really help this team. And apparently they told the players about it. They told the players, and then they didn't do it. And so, look, we don't have the full details. And I think once we get past this trade deadline, we'll know more. But it really seems like this front office has just failed pretty badly. And from all of the reliable sources in the local media, they just this organization is a mess. And apparently the Kings had a deal for John Collins and Brandon Ingram, or Brandon Ingram in the offseason. And Mike Brown was the guy that said no. He's like, no, John Collins is a low IQ player. And it's like, okay, well, he may be right that he's low IQ. I don't know. But he's probably wrong about John Collins being the guy. But I'm like, that's not Mike Brown's job. Why is the front office letting Mike Brown dictate what you do with the roster? I understand, of course, you want to communicate with the coach. And so it's like, do you want John Collins or do you want this other guy? And if Mike Brown says, oh, I don't want John Collins, then you go get the other guy. But in this scenario, there's no other option. You know what I mean? And so for the front office to just make no moves because what? Every single person within the organization apparently has to sign off before you make a move to improve the roster and add an obvious necessity in a guy with size that you need after 2-3 years, so it just seems like this front office, I mean, they just haven't gotten the job done. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in, because by all accounts, Fox has been asking the same thing for the past year, where he's been saying the same thing. I'm not going to sign my extension unless you add to the team around me. And then if you do that and you become competitive, then he's going to stay. He's never asked for a trade. But then it feels like all of the sudden the front office was just like, oh, he's serious. It's like, yeah. So now here we are. So that's my little rant on the whole situation that's going on. And, I'll talk about this a lot more as time goes on. I will say, though, I just hope something happens. And I think if nothing happens, then that just means you're going to trade Fox in the offseason because you didn't get a deal that you liked now. So you're going to wait. And that's fine. If you're going to trade Fox, get the most value. And if you think the most value is going to be in the offseason, which it totally could be because things get more freed up in the offseason, that's fine. Do that. But don't do nothing and then still try to keep Fox. You either need to do nothing and then trade him in the offseason, or you need to trade him now, or you need to make a trade to improve this team to try to keep him. Those are the options. You can't just do nothing or add another guard and then also try to keep Fox. And then, I just hope that there's some kind of resolution that we come to by the trade deadline so that we don't have to kind of keep playing in this weird state of limbo. Hold up. I'm just editing this video and then I see LUKA gets traded for Anthony Davis. Who cares about this anymore? What the? I feel like this has nothing to do with what I'm talking about at all. But I feel like I have to acknowledge this. How does LUKA get traded for Anthony Davis? Either one, LUKA just demanded out and somehow kept it quiet, or two, LUKA's injury is bad, and so the Mavericks want to get off him. I don't know, man. That's literally the craziest trade I've ever seen. Now anything the Kings do with Fox or anything, it's all gonna be not in the spotlight, I guess, because that's just insane. Anyways, back to the regular programming. Because, we can get to this game now. I was putting it off because this game was so ugly, actually talking about this game. It's not like there's that much to talk about. But, the Kings just came out, and they didn't necessarily get smashed right away. They were playing well offensively. They were keeping up. But just keeping up isn't really going to cut it. And OKC is without their second and third best players, and you still get smashed here because you're just keeping up, but you're just giving everything up defensively. OKC just said, we are going to hunt every single mismatch. We're going to hunt the matchups that we want, and we're going to exploit them. We're going to put Domantas Sabonis in the pick and roll with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Isaiah Hartenstein. We're going to go at him, and we're going to play 1-on-2 at the rim against Sabonis. And the Kings didn't really do anything about it. They stayed home on shooters a lot of the first quarter, and the Kings weren't really getting that physical with Shai, and they weren't trying to kind of force him to be uncomfortable. And so then, like, that's a tough situation when you have Shai coming down on you and Hartenstein rolling to the rim. That's a tough situation, even if you're Victor Wembanyama. And if you're Domantas Sabonis, it's way worse. And Shai just got to his spots in the floater area, knocked down some floaters, or you would kick it to Hartenstein and he would knock down some floaters. It was just floaters, 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 because the Kings were trying to take away the three-point line. And the Kings were overplaying hard on three-point shooters. But the problem is that just gave up the middle of the floor. It gave up the back cuts. And also what it did is it forced switches, because you're overplaying on a guy up top. He just backs up a little bit. He like fakes one way, backs up a little bit. All of a sudden you have to switch. And with the lack of switchability that the Kings have in the starting lineup, when you have two small guards, DeMar DeRozan, Sabonis at the rim, there's just not a lot of switchability. And so OKC, every time they would just get a switch, and especially Aaron Wiggins. And this is why he went on to score 41 points, is because the Kings were overplaying him at the three-point line, and he was exploiting it perfectly and hunting mismatches and getting bigger guys on him and then shooting over them. Or he was just back cutting if no one was switching. Offensively, the Kings did keep up, and they played a very good first quarter offensively. Malik Monk was awesome early on. He was getting to the rim. He was running in transition. He was back cutting off Sabonis. He was playing the two-man game with Sabonis and feeding Domas, or taking it all the way himself when Sabonis would pop out to the three-point line. He hit a nasty hezzy to get to the rim. So it was really nice from Monk early on. It was the Monk and Sabonis show like it normally is. And then something actually really positive and surprising happened at the end of the first quarter. Sabonis went out of the game, and the Kings actually started playing well. And then maybe even better than they were with Sabonis in the game, which just never happens. And Isaac Jones comes in, and he was a big part of that. And, I mean, he came in, and he looks like a nice backup five that we haven't had all season. And, you know, I get he's on a two-way contract, so he can only play so many games. But, man, we could have really used him before. But it was nice because he came in and grabbed an offensive rebound. He got switched onto Shai multiple times right away and held his own. Got a defensive rebound, pushed it up to Fox. Fox got an and one. Fox hit a three. DeMar hit a couple of middies. And honestly, if the Kings just had a little bit of a better whistle in the first quarter like I thought they should have had, then they probably could have been leading. They were only down 5, and there were some definitely questionable calls. Just, you know, the whistle Shai gets versus the whistle Monk and DeMar were getting, and Sabonis inside for sure. Like, if a few things go the Kings' way, they could have been leading after the first quarter. And so that's something that we haven't really seen, because usually the bench comes in, Sabonis goes out, things don't go well, but they went well. And so shout out to Isaac Jones for that, but also it's good on Fox and DeMar for making things happen there. But then the second quarter just fell apart. And again, the Kings were overplaying, trying to deny passes on the perimeter. But it just resulted in so many mismatches, so many guys getting open on the back cuts, going at the rim. And either it was a 2-on-1 at the rim against Sabonis or whoever, really. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a 2-on-1 at the rim, and either they're getting a floater or they're then kicking out to the perimeter because the Kings have to collapse inside to try to help, and they're knocking down shots. Or sometimes the Kings just had to switch on the perimeter, and when a big like Sabonis or even Isaac Jones gets switched onto a guard or a wing that can shoot the three, they have to back off, but then they were just hitting the three over them. And there was also the rebounding problem. There were a lot of times where guys, especially Malik Monk, were just getting back cut. And so either those back cuts would result in buckets because it's just another guy inside that's open, or they resulted in that guy that was back cutting then picking up the offensive rebound and tipping it in. There were a lot of tip-ins for the Thunder. I mean, Aaron Wiggins, again, he has a lot of those. He had 14 rebounds. I believe 6 of them were offensive. Yeah, 6 of them. And it just, I mean, it wasn't a good rebounding night for the Kings. DeMar had 1 rebound. He wasn't getting in there and helping Sabonis. The guards weren't really doing a great job of getting in there and helping Sabonis against all these guys. And offensively, they didn't start out the quarter very well. We had Devin Carter missing pretty badly on 2 3-point shots. I think he airballed the second one, and then Fox followed that up with another airball from 3. But Devin's 3, it's a work in progress, it seems like, because he can hit it. There's no doubt he can hit it, especially when he's wide open. But, when he's given time and guys aren't really closing on him. But it's when guys are closing out on him hard that's kind of worrying, because it just takes so long for him to get into his shot and the release point is so low. So it's a work in progress. The Kings did go deep into their bench. They went 5 into their bench, and those 5 managed to combine for a whopping 0 points in the first half, which was cool compared to the 14 for OKC off the bench in the first half. The only thing that was really saving us was Keegan knocking down some threes. Knocked one down in the first quarter, one near the start of the second quarter. Fox also knocked down some threes. I mean, guys in the starting lineup were scoring. It's not like they were that inefficient. Everyone in the starting lineup had 14 plus points, with Fox leading the way with 20. And that's with them not playing a lot down the stretch, obviously, because garbage time started early. So that wasn't necessarily the problem. I mean, the Kings didn't shoot well from 3, and that was a lot to do with the OKC defense. And they also just missed some open looks. But I think that's kind of like, you don't have any flow because OKC was playing good defense and kept the open looks to a minimum. But it's just no help off the bench, which, again, classic, no help off the bench. And then it felt like towards the end of that second quarter, it just kind of collapsed defensively, and the effort, the will, the focus kind of fell off. And again, I know it's their job to come out here and play, but I don't really blame them. It's a tough situation, especially against the number 1 team in the West, because OKC is the type of team that they just keep going. They were going after every loose ball, hustle, 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 and so that just really exposed the Kings. Because it's not like they gave up out there, but they just didn't seem to have the same level of focus or intensity that the Thunder had. And so with the Thunder shooting very well from 3, Lou Dort hitting 6 threes, Aaron Wiggins doing what he was doing, Shea doing what he was doing, scoring 20 plus in the first half, Kenrich Williams coming in, going 2 for 3 from 3, 8 for 10 from the field. We just kept letting Kenrich Williams bully us inside. I mean, it was just over at halftime. And so, I mean, there's just not much to talk about in the second half because it was just over. Shea was cooking everyone. Keon Ellis had a pretty tough time against Shea, especially in the first half. Keegan one-on-one was okay, but around those screens, there just wasn't much resistance. And honestly, the only thing I was enjoying in the second half, it was Keegan shooting. I wanted him to shoot more. He went 4 for 5 from 3. There were some times he passed up threes. He was 2 for 2 at one point, and he passed up some open threes. And I was just like, shoot the ball. Like, we got nothing else, man. Just shoot the ball until you miss. I would rather him go like 6 for 15 from 3 in this game than 4 for 5, you know what I mean? Like, just keep shooting at this point. We're already down so much. But him shooting well was good. And then Isaac Jones coming in and contributing really well. And then I wanted to see Devin Carter. The third quarter just kind of felt like a waste. I mean, Herter came in. He hit a 3. That was cool. It's like, woo, first bench points of the game. But, I mean, both teams, well, the Kings mostly, were just going through the motions in the third quarter. And they actually won the quarter 35-31. But it was just kind of both teams, one team goes down, shoots a shot. The other team goes down, shoots a shot. Like, no one was into it, I was more excited for the fourth quarter, but for some reason, it took until like 7 or 8 minutes left in the game to actually put in the garbage time unit. Like, the game's over, Doug. I get it, but he did the same thing in Denver. And to be fair, we did almost come back because of Doug McDermott, but just wave the white flag. We had a nice Isaac Jones oop and one from Fox. That was cool. he missed the free throw. He went 1 for 3 from the free throw line, which isn't great, but 3 for 3 inside. Devin Carter hit a three, made a couple of nice plays defensively, had a couple nice drives, drawing fouls. But I definitely was most excited for Isaac Jones. And I feel like that fourth quarter, I was like almost preparing myself for if the Kings do go into a rebuild. And I was like, you know, I could get used to just cheering for young guys again. You know, like, ooh, Isaac Jones. Like, I was having fun watching Isaac play. I mean, he's just a fun player to watch. He's got incredible bounce, incredible touch inside, and he runs the floor hard. The exact type of player the Kings need. And I feel like the Kings kind of made a mistake not or keeping both Doug and Jay Crowder around. I mean, Jay Crowder just never plays. I understand why we have him, but he never plays. And so we have an open roster spot that could go to Isaac, but also at the trade deadline, you want an open roster spot. So felt like we probably should have gotten rid of Orlando Robinson and maybe Jay Crowder or Doug McDermott, just so we could actually have Isaac Jones playing real minutes, because you only get a certain amount of games on the two-way contract. And he's already, you know, getting towards that amount of games. But he looks like the backup five and the type of player that we need. The athleticism that we need, the versatility that we need. We also saw Mason Jones. He came in, air balls and open three. I'm just like, okay, great. But then he did make some nice plays. He made some nice plays getting inside. He had a nice step through. We got to the free throw line. So it was good to see him actually play some good minutes, because most of his minutes have just been awful even in garbage time, and he can never hit a three, which he does in the G League very well. It's not like, oh, you know, Mason Jones, he's going to get an NBA contract now. He's definitely not, but I was just happy to actually see him be able to make something happen at the NBA level. And it's just fun to watch Isaac Jones put someone in the basket and go with a little hook shot over them, because that's just what he does in the G League. He's just putting guys in the basket with his strength and finishing through them. So it's fun to see that. We didn't get to see any three-point attempts. I want to see some threes from Isaac. He was hitting them in his stretch where he went crazy in the G League, just constant 30 bombs, scoring 40. He was hitting threes during that, so kind of wish we'd seen more. But I just hope we continue to get opportunity to see more from him. I'm not going through any other individual performances. You know, the starters, they scored. We all know what happened. We got crushed. No single player's at fault. No single player played all that well either. You know, it's like it was a whole team thing. And it's so hard to look ahead, because we have 2 games before the trade deadline. Minnesota and Orlando. Like, what do we expect from these games? What if something happens before that? I mean, I hope something happens tomorrow. Like, I hope something happens tonight. Because it's not fun to watch a team that kind of... It's not like this team necessarily feels dead right now, because it is the Thunder. Like, they're maybe the best team in the league. And we had a competitive game against Philly, and probably should have won that game. And I don't feel like we played badly. We just missed shots. And so it'll be interesting against Minnesota to see, like, okay, is this team just kind of like dead until the trade deadline? Or was it just the Thunder? Can this team come out and provide the energy, like they aren't kind of just waiting for a trade? Because that's the only way that they're going to be able to win some games. And honestly, once you kind of accept that this front office is just a mess, and things probably like the right decisions are probably not going to be made with this team, and that's just the way it is. Once you kind of accept that, I feel like I've been able to accept that a little bit recently, and just been able to kind of laugh at all the ridiculousness of all the rumors going around, and all like the misinformation spread by Spurs reporters about the whole situation, and how we got like one guy who's using Joe from Elk Grove, who called in to a Sacramento radio show and said he had some info, like some Spurs guys using that as like a credible source of information. You know, like it's just everyone trying to come up with all these rumors and get their clicks in. It's kind of funny to watch. It's if you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to like see what's fake and what's not, and you know who to trust and who not to. But when you treat it kind of like a reality TV show, it can be kind of fun, these trade scenarios. But then comes game day, and then it's not so fun because you're like, oh, I got to watch my team get beat by 34. So that's not great. So hopefully the Kings can come out with the right energy against Minnesota and be locked in. Hopefully not be distracted. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if it doesn't happen, then we're just going to have to kind of keep on waiting until something happens. But it should happen here soon if it's going to happen. And if it does, you know where to find me. And if it doesn't, then I will be back to recap the game against Minnesota. So I will see you guys then. Peace.